Sometimes the smallest act of kindness creates a ripple so powerful that it returns multiplied 100 times. What if I told you that one elderly woman, stuck in a snowstorm, changed an entire community, with nothing but an open door? In a world that constantly teaches us to make quick judgments based on clothing, background, status, or stereotypes, it becomes incredibly easy to overlook the quiet humanity that exists in every person. We often forget that beneath every leather jacket, beneath every wrinkle, beneath every loud engine or tough expression, there is a human being with a story, a struggle, and a beating heart. The story of the elderly woman and the group of bikers reminds us that appearances are often the weakest measure of a person's true character, and that the deepest forms of kindness can come from the most unexpected places. On that freezing winter night, when the snowstorm raged outside, the old lady didn't see the bikers as society might see them. She didn't see scary men or strangers who might be dangerous. She didn't see stereotypes or labels. She simply saw people. People who were cold, stranded, vulnerable, and clearly in need of help. Her instincts were guided not by fear or prejudice, but by compassion, a rare quality in a world that often teaches us to protect ourselves by staying distant from those who look different. This act of pure empathy reveals an important truth. Kindness flourishes when we choose to look beyond the surface. The human heart recognizes need long before the human mind constructs fears. When she opened her door to those bikers, she was essentially saying that she believed in the goodness of people, more than she believed in the fear created by appearances. And that single moment of courage and humanity teaches us something incredibly powerful. Real kindness requires us to push past our assumptions. Most people would have hesitated. Many would have locked their doors tighter. Some would have called for help or tried to protect themselves first. But this old lady trusted her intuition. She trusted that compassion is stronger than fear, and that offering shelter during a storm is not just an act of charity, but an act of shared humanity. Her home became a safe haven not because she had a lot to give, but because she had the courage to let empathy lead the way. When the bikers entered her home, they weren't the intimidating figures society paints them to be. They were grateful, respectful, and deeply aware that this stranger was risking her comfort and safety just to help them. They sat quietly, humbled by her hospitality. They accepted the blankets she offered, drank the warm soup she prepared, and rested by the fire she lit for them. In that moment, all differences melted away. Age, appearance, lifestyle, and background no longer mattered. The only thing that remained was the recognition of shared humanity. This single act set into motion a chain reaction that would forever change her life. But more importantly, it demonstrated the profound principle that the heart does not discriminate, only the mind does. The next morning, when 100 bikers lined up outside her home, it was not merely a gesture of gratitude. It was a powerful statement against stereotypes. These men, often judged harshly by society, showed honor, respect, loyalty, and gratitude in a way that many people would never expect. Their presence 100 strong symbolized that underneath every appearance, there can exist incredible kindness. They repaired her home, cleaned her yard, restocked her pantry, and reassured her that she would never be alone again. Their actions shattered the image of bikers as rough, careless, or dangerous. Instead, they appeared as protectors, as friends, as a community built not by similarity, but by the shared experience of compassion. This story teaches us a vital lesson. When we judge people by appearance, we limit the possibility of connection. When we look deeper, we unlock extraordinary relationships and acts of mutual respect. Kindness is not bound by age, culture, lifestyle, or social identity. It is a universal language, one that every human being can speak, understand, and respond to. Too often in life, we walk past opportunities to help because we overthink, overanalyze, or underestimate the goodness in others. We let stereotypes control our decisions. We choose safety over empathy, distance over courage. But true kindness, the kind that inspires, The kind that transforms requires us to override that instinct to judge and instead choose to see the human soul behind the exterior. The lady's decision to shelter the bikers is a reminder that acts of kindness do not require perfection, wealth, or power. They require heart. And her experience proves that when kindness is given without prejudice, it returns multiplied in ways we can never predict. This is why kindness transcends appearances. Stands not only as a moral lesson, but as a challenge for all of us to look past the obvious, to step beyond assumptions, and to remember that every person we meet has a story, a heart, and a capacity for goodness if only we allow ourselves to see it. In life, we often underestimate the power of a single moment, a single decision, or a single act of kindness. We imagine that only grand gestures, large donations, or massive efforts can change lives. Yet history, humanity, and everyday experience tell us something very different. Sometimes the smallest act done with pure intention becomes the spark that ignites a chain reaction far greater than anything we could have imagined. The story of the elderly woman and the 15 stranded bikers is a perfect example of this truth. On that fierce winter night, the storm was at its worst. The wind howled, the snow piled up against the windows, and the roads had become icy traps. When the old woman looked outside and saw headlights struggling through the storm, she could have ignored them. She could have stayed by her fire and pretended not to see. After all, she was elderly, alone, and vulnerable. But her heart would not let her walk away. Instead, she opened her door literally and symbolically and invited strangers into her world. It was a small act in the moment. She didn't have much to offer. Her home was simple. Her pantry wasn't full. Her strength was limited. But kindness is not measured by quantity, it is measured by willingness. She offered what she had: warmth, shelter, a bowl of hot soup, and the comfort of human compassion. To her, these acts may have felt ordinary. She was simply doing what her heart told her was right. Yet she had no idea that this seemingly small decision would create ripples far beyond that single night. The bikers she helped were not just grateful, they were transformed. Her kindness touched them in a way few experiences in their lives ever had. People often assume that helping others requires grand resources. But in reality, it is the intention behind the effort that matters more than the scale. This old woman's actions show us that life-changing moments often come from simple choices, like opening a door, offering a blanket, or sharing a meal. These gestures might look small on the outside, but they carry emotional weight that can shift someone's perspective, restore their hope, or renew their faith in humanity. When the sun rose the next morning and she stepped outside, she didn't expect anything more than a quiet goodbye. But instead, she was met with the thunderous sound of nearly 100 motorcycles lined up outside her small home. She had given shelter to 15 strangers, yet 100 came to return the kindness. Why? Because kindness multiplies, because compassion spreads, because when you touch a heart, that heart touches many more. Her small act had grown into something far bigger. These bikers weren't just showing up to say thank you. They were honoring her. They were acknowledging how deeply her kindness affected them. They cleaned her yard, repaired her roof, brought food, and promised they would always be there for her. Her tiny act in the middle of a snowstorm had blossomed into a movement of gratitude and loyalty. This powerful moment teaches a truth often forgotten. We never truly know how far our kindness can travel. One smile can lift a heavy spirit. One comforting word can stop someone from giving up. One act of generosity can inspire an entire community. And one open door on a winter night can bring 100 protectors to your doorstep. We live in a world where people frequently question whether their efforts matter. Individuals feel small. They feel powerless. They feel that their actions are too insignificant to make a difference. But this story breaks that illusion. It shows that impact is not created by size, it is created by sincerity. The old woman had no idea who those bikers were. She didn't know their backgrounds, their stories, or their struggles. She didn't intend to create a movement. She didn't expect anything in return. But kindness, when genuine, always leaves a mark. It stays in people's hearts long after the moment passes. And that is how small acts grow into powerful forces. They build bridges where walls once stood. They create unity where division existed. They heal wounds we may never even see. Most importantly, they inspire others to pay it forward, turning a single act into a chain reaction of goodness. When those 100 bikes rolled into her neighborhood, they didn't just bring noise and engines, they brought proof. Proof that the world still responds to compassion. Proof that kindness can travel farther than we think. Proof that one simple act from one ordinary person can create extraordinary change. The old woman did not set out to change the world, but in her own quiet corner of it, she did. One of the most profound qualities of genuine kindness is that it asks for nothing in return. It is offered freely, without calculations, without hidden motives, and without waiting for a reward. True compassion is unconditional, and it flows naturally from those who understand that doing good is valuable not because of what comes back, but because of what it brings into the world. The story of the old woman who sheltered 15 stranded bikers in a snowstorm reflects this truth with rare clarity. When she opened her door to them, she did so with a heart full of concern and goodwill, not a heart that wondered what she might gain by helping them. She didn't pause to think about whether anyone would thank her, whether the bikers would ever return, or whether her kindness would be remembered. She acted purely from instinctive humanity. Her focus was simple and sincere. People are in trouble, and I can help them right now. Helping without expectation is not something that comes easily in today's world. We live in a society where many favors are transactional, where kindness is sometimes offered with conditions or a mental tally of who owes what. But the old woman didn't operate from that mindset. Her compassion was untouched by ego, untouched by fear, and untouched by the need for recognition. In that moment, she was not thinking of herself. She was thinking of cold, shivering strangers trapped in a deadly storm. They were tired, they were endangered, and they were far from help. She didn't worry about their appearances or the stereotypes attached to bikers. She cared only about their humanity, and because of that, she gave everything she could. Her warmth, her home, her food, her comfort. This level of generosity is powerful because it is so rare. When we help without expecting anything, our actions become purer, stronger, and more meaningful. They come from the heart, not from desire, and this is exactly what makes such kindness unforgettable. The bikers sensed this in her. They knew she wasn't helping to be praised. They knew she wasn't expecting repayment. Her humble nature, her gentle voice, and her honest intention touched them deeply. It's easy to thank someone who expects thanks. It's far more emotional when kindness catches you by surprise. And that is why her actions resonated so powerfully. When someone helps you without asking for anything, you feel it differently. You feel seen, you feel valued, you feel that the world still holds goodness, even in the harshest situations. Her kindness didn't merely warm their bodies, it warmed their spirits. By offering shelter to 15 strangers, she unknowingly created a spark. Acts of unconditional kindness do that. They inspire a sense of responsibility, gratitude, and reciprocity in the people who receive them. When you help without expectation, you awaken the desire in others to do the same. Those men left her home in the early morning, grateful but quiet, unsure how to express how deeply they had been moved. But their silence did not mean they had forgotten. On the contrary, the purity of her gesture became something they could not ignore or walk away from. The next morning, she woke to the thunder of engines, not 15, but 100. A small army of bikers returned, not because they owed her anything, not because she demanded anything, but because her selfless kindness had stirred something powerful in them. They wanted to honor her, not repay her financially or out of obligation, but out of genuine gratitude. This is the beauty of helping without expectation. It often creates a response far greater than what you might have received if you had asked for something. Reward. Faith-based kindness yields small returns. Unconditional kindness yields emotional, unforgettable ones. When the bikers stood before her house, ready to help, they weren't responding to a favor. They were responding to love. Her simple act of compassion had touched their pride, their loyalty, and their sense of brotherhood. They repaired her home, cleared her driveway, stocked her pantry, and promised her lifelong support. Their return was not payment, it was admiration. Her example teaches us something essential. When you help selflessly, you create a ripple that spreads far beyond the initial moment. You inspire others, you uplift them, you give them hope, and often, the impact becomes bigger than anything you could have imagined. Helping without expectation is a quiet form of greatness. It does not shout. It does not demand applause. It simply does what is right, and because of that, it stays in the hearts of others long after the moment passes. This is why the old woman's simple gesture became a legendary act of kindness. She didn't try to change anyone's life. She didn't try to do anything extraordinary. She simply acted from genuine care, no expectations, no conditions. And in doing so, she demonstrated the true meaning of compassion, giving freely, loving openly, and letting kindness flow without limits. A true community is not created by shared location, common interests, or physical proximity. It is built on something much deeper and far more meaningful: compassion. Communities grow wherever human beings choose to care for one another, protect one another, and recognize each other's worth. This truth becomes beautifully clear in the story of the elderly woman and the group of bikers whose lives unexpectedly intertwined during a brutal snowstorm. On that cold, merciless night, the old woman stood alone in her small home, surrounded by silence and swirling snow. She had no idea that within hours, her life would cross paths with 15 men she had never met. And these men, tough in appearance and hardened by the road, had no idea that a gentle stranger was about to show them the kind of compassion many of them had rarely experienced. When she opened her door to them, she wasn't just offering shelter. She was extending something far more powerful: a sense of belonging, even if only for a night. For those bikers who were used to being judged or feared, this simple act of acceptance made her home feel like a place of safety, trust, and warmth. Without realizing it, she became the center of a moment that would connect many lives in a profound way. Compassion has the power to turn strangers into allies and allies into a community. It doesn't need time to build, it simply needs sincerity. In one act of kindness, she initiated a bond that neither age nor lifestyle differences could break. The warmth she offered spread far beyond her living room. It seeped into hearts that had perhaps forgotten what unconditional kindness felt like. Communities don't form because people are similar. They form because people care. Those bikers had spent years riding across highways, deserts, forests, and cities. They had seen the harshness of life, the loneliness of the road, and the ways the world often pushes people to survive rather than connect. Yet in this tiny home, warmed by an old fireplace, they felt something rare: humanity at its purest. As they sat with their hands wrapped around warm cups of soup, listening to the storm rage outside, they were no longer just bikers. They were human beings being treated with dignity, regardless of how they looked or lived. And the old woman was no longer a stranger. She was someone who saw their humanity before she saw their appearance. This is how communities begin, not through rules or structures, but through compassion that bridges differences. The next morning, when the storm had calmed and the bikers left quietly, they carried with them more than gratitude. They carried a sense of responsibility toward the woman who had cared for them without hesitation. They carried her kindness like a promise, one they intended to honor, and honor it they did. When she stepped outside the following morning and found 100 motorcycles lined up outside her home, she witnessed the exact moment when compassion blossomed into community. These men didn't return because they were required to. They came because they felt connected to her. They came because compassion had tied their lives together in a way none of them had expected. A community had formed, unexpected, unconventional, but deeply real. These bikers, who had lived on the edge of society, found a new sense of purpose in protecting the woman who had shown them love. And she, who had lived her life quietly and humbly, discovered that she was not alone. Their compassion for her matched the compassion she had shown them. This is the unseen power of compassion. It multiplies, strengthens, and solidifies relationships. Communities formed by compassion are not fragile, they are resilient. They don't collapse under pressure because they are rooted in emotional truth. The bikers didn't care about her social status, wealth, or background. They cared about the goodness she carried. They cared about her heart. Compassion overcomes fear. Compassion erases judgment. Compassion turns difference into unity. When these 100 bikers raked her yard, fixed her roof, shoveled her snow, and stocked her shelves, they weren't performing charity. They were participating in a shared bond. They were building a community around her, not with contracts, but with loyalty, not with words, but with action. The old woman's home became a symbol of what compassion can create. It became a reminder that people from different worlds can still come together in meaningful ways. Her kindness created a ripple that gathered strangers into a family, not by blood, but by choice. Communities are not defined by walls or city limits. They are created when people decide to take care of one another. They are built in living rooms during storms, in moments of crisis, in unexpected gestures of generosity. Compassion does not require similarities, it requires heart. And once compassion enters a space, it transforms it. The old woman and the bikers may have lived entirely separate lives before that night, but after that moment, they shared a connection that surpassed anything physical. They became proof that when kindness leads, community follows. Human behavior is contagious. Our actions, whether positive or negative, have a way of spreading far beyond the moment. But among all the actions that ripple outward, goodness is the most powerful. A sincere act of kindness doesn't stop with the person who received it. It creates momentum, ignites hope, refreshes faith in humanity, and inspires others to give in return. The story of the old woman and the bikers beautifully demonstrates this truth. Goodness multiplies. When the old woman opened her door to the 15 stranded bikers, she wasn't thinking about creating change. She was not trying to teach a lesson, start a movement, or inspire anyone. She simply did what felt right. She saw human beings in distress and responded with honesty, warmth, and love. But the impact of her choice did not end with that quiet night of shelter. Her one moment of generosity set off a series of reactions that grew far beyond what she ever imagined. Goodness is like a spark, it lights something inside people. When the bikers experienced her genuine care, something shifted in them. These men, who were often misunderstood or judged by society, suddenly found themselves treated with compassion without fear or suspicion. Someone trusted them. Someone cared for them. Someone welcomed them without asking what they could give in return. That kind of pure goodness leaves a deep mark. It reaches into places where many people carry wounds of rejection, loneliness, or distrust. And when a person is shown unexpected kindness, it awakens their desire to pass it on, to do for someone else what was done for them. So when those 15 bikers rode back into the night, they carried more than warm bodies and full stomachs. They carried renewed admiration for kindness, and with it, a responsibility to honor what they received. Goodness rarely ends with the original giver. It plants a seed in the heart of the receiver. That seed grew quickly. The next morning, when the old woman stepped outside and found 100 motorcycles lined up in front of her home, she saw the direct proof of how goodness multiplies. Her single act of hospitality had motivated dozens of men who had never even met her, to gather, ride together, and show up at her doorstep. They didn't come because they had to. They didn't come because they wanted attention. They came because they felt inspired by what she had done for their fellow riders. Goodness is powerful because it triggers something emotional and personal. It doesn't command imitation, it invites it. It gently pushes people toward their better selves. When people witness sincere kindness, they are reminded that the world still has beauty, that humanity still has hope, and that they themselves have the ability to create positive change. These 100 bikers weren't moved by obligation, they were moved by admiration. They saw the old woman's selflessness and wanted to honor it with their own acts of service. They fixed her home, cleared her yard, stocked her pantry, and vowed to protect her. They didn't repay a debt, they continued a legacy. This is the magic of goodness. It never stops with one person. It keeps going, expanding, inspiring, multiplying. Every good action becomes a message that tells others, look how powerful kindness can be. Look what happens when someone chooses compassion. When people witness acts of goodness, it stirs something in them, something ancient, something deeply human. We are wired to respond to kindness with more kindness. It doesn't matter who we are, our age, our status, our appearance, or our past. When someone treats us with genuine care, we automatically feel a desire to reflect that goodness, either to them or to someone else. This is why stories of compassion spread quickly and touch so many hearts, because goodness resonates with the best parts of us. Think of how often a simple kind gesture from a stranger, holding a door, offering help, giving a sincere smile, lifts your entire day. You might then treat the next person a little better, and they might treat someone else kinder too. A chain reaction begins. In the case of the old woman, the chain reaction was powerful and visible. Her one warm-hearted decision created a movement of support that reached across an entire biker community. Men who had endured hardship, prejudice, and adversity found themselves inspired to give back. They became protectors, helpers, and friends, all because one woman showed compassion when she didn't have to. This story teaches us a vital truth. Goodness is not weak, it is transformative. It doesn't stay small, it spreads. It doesn't fade, it multiplies, and it doesn't end. It evolves into more goodness. When we choose to be good, we become catalysts for change. We ignite hope, we soften hearts, we awaken generosity, we inspire compassion. And sometimes, as in the story of the old lady and the bikers, we turn strangers into a community, connected not by background or circumstance, but by shared humanity. Her kindness made them kinder, their kindness made her life safer. And the chain continues, reaching whoever hears their story. There is a quiet but powerful truth woven through every culture, every faith, and every human story. Whatever kindness you put into the world will eventually return to you, often in ways far greater than you expected. The old woman who sheltered 15 stranded bikers in the middle of a raging snowstorm never imagined that her simple act of compassion would come back to her multiplied 100-fold. Yet that is exactly what happened. Her story demonstrates one of the most beautiful laws of life. Kindness has a way of growing, expanding, and returning with a force far stronger than when it first left your hands. When she opened her door that night, she did not consider future rewards. She wasn't thinking about protection, gifts, or gratitude. She wasn't imagining crowds of people or dramatic gestures. She simply saw human beings in trouble and acted from a place of love. But life has a way of honoring sincerity. Kindness, when done with a pure heart, does not vanish. It becomes energy, living, moving energy, that travels from person to person until it finds its way back to the one who started it. In the warmth of her home, with 15 cold and exhausted bikers gathered around her fire, she shared what little she had: a few blankets, a pot of soup, the shelter of 4 walls, a reassuring smile. These offerings might have seemed small to her, but to the men sitting in her living room, soaked from the snow and chilled to the bone, they were nothing short of life-saving. Kindness does not have to be grand to be life-changing. Sometimes it is the simplest gestures that lodge themselves deepest into the heart. These bikers left her home feeling seen, respected, and cared for. They rode off into the early morning light, their engines echoing a silent promise. A promise that her kindness would not be forgotten. They didn't tell her what they planned to do. They didn't reveal the spark she had lit inside them. But they carried something heavy with them. Gratitude that demanded to be repaid with honor. And so the next morning, when she looked out her window and saw 100 motorcycles lined up in front of her modest home, she witnessed kindness returning to her multiplied. She gave shelter to 15. 100 came to shelter her in return. This is the beauty of multiplied kindness. It does not come back in the same form you gave it. It comes back magnified. It comes back strengthened. It comes back woven with the emotions, efforts, and intentions of everyone it touched along the way. Those bikers didn't show up just to say thank you. They came to give her far more than she had given them, all because her kindness had moved them deeply enough to tell their entire brotherhood. Word spread quickly among riders who valued loyalty above all else. They saw her as someone who had cared for their own, someone who deserved protection, respect, and support. That morning, she was no longer just an old woman living alone. She had become the matriarch of an unexpected family. Her small act of generosity had created bonds she never could have formed on her own. The bikers shoveled her snow, repaired her fence, filled her shelves with groceries, checked her heating system, and made sure she would never be stranded or unsafe again. They stood before her not as recipients of charity, but as grateful sons honoring a woman who had shown them what kindness truly meant. This is what multiplied kindness looks like. It turns one night of giving into a lifetime of support. It transforms strangers into protectors. It replaces loneliness with community. It takes a single choice and stretches its impact across dozens, even hundreds of lives. Kindness that comes back multiplied often returns in ways far more meaningful than the original gesture. The old woman gave warmth on a cold night. In return, she received emotional warmth, loyalty, gratitude, and a sense of safety she had never expected. She gave temporary shelter. In return, she gained a permanent network of guardians who watched out for her like family. This principle applies far beyond this story. Every time we choose kindness, we set in motion a ripple. We may not see it immediately. We may not even recognize it when it returns. But it will come back, because goodness cannot travel through the world without eventually circling back to its source. The old woman's experience reminds us that kindness is never wasted. Even when it seems unnoticed, it sinks into the human heart, planting seeds that grow quietly until the moment they bloom. Not every act of kindness comes back quickly. Not every act returns dramatically. But when it does return, it often does so with unexpected strength, sometimes in moments when we need it most. She offered compassion to 15 vulnerable strangers. The universe responded by sending her 100 protectors. Her story teaches us that what we give freely, from a place of truth and warmth, will find its way home again, magnified, intensified, and enriched by every heart it touches along the way. So as we reflect on this remarkable story, let us remember something important. Kindness is not measured by age, wealth, or strength. It is measured by courage, the courage to see a stranger not as a threat, but as a human being, the courage to open a door when it feels easier to turn away, courage to believe that compassion still matters in a world that often forgets it. That old woman never expected anything in return, yet her simple act of love transformed an entire community. She gave shelter for a single night and gained a family for a lifetime. Her story teaches us that every act of goodness plants a seed, and those seeds grow into forests of hope we may never fully see. So let this be our reminder. Every time you choose kindness, you change the world even if you don't realize it. And who knows, one day, the kindness you give may return to you multiplied. Just as one warm-hearted woman found 100 motorcycles lined up outside her door, may we all be brave enough to offer help, humble enough to expect nothing, and wise enough to know that compassion is the foundation on which the strongest communities are built.